Hey, so this is going to be your first lesson for 6th grade advanced, and it's called modeling percents, which you did a little bit of in 5th grade. So the first thing we're going to discuss is we're going to brainstorm, what do you hear when you hear the term percent? Like, what does it sound like? So we're going to have a class discussion on that. Some vocab is a percent is a part to whole ratio where the whole is always over 100. Or the whole is 100. And I always say over 100 because the 100 goes on the bottom. Move that over. Okay. There we go. So first example we have is we're going to use this hundreds model to shade the following quantities. So we have 50. So it means that we're going to shade 50%. So 50% will mean it'll be 50 out of 100. So it means we're going to shade 50 squares out of the 100. So I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we'll just shade down. Oops. There we are. So I shaded 50% of the blocks. Let's try another one. 35. So this is going to be 35%. So it means it's going to be 35 out of 100 blocks. So 35 blocks are going to be shaded. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to count 1, 2, 3. And so I'm going to shade in 30. And we'll do the other 5 here in a second. Okay, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's shade those in. So we shaded in 35% out of 100 blocks, or 100%. Okay, one more. 10%. Okay, so this is 10%. So it means it's going to be 10 out of 100%, or 10 blocks out of 100 blocks. So it means we're just going to shade the first row. And that's 10%. Okay, so this, let's say, is your turn. So why don't you pause the video and try to answer questions 1, 2, and 3. Okay, first question is, what percent of the squares are shaded? Well, so I know this is 10 blocks, this is 10, and that's 5. So if I add them up, there's 25 blocks shaded out of 100. So this is 25%. And I actually already kind of answered question number 2, because one thing I said there's 25 blocks out of 100 shaded, which is also the same thing as the ratio. 25% out of 100%, or 25 blocks out of 100 blocks. So how are the percent and the ratio related? Well, they're actually equal. They're just in different forms. Oh, and I think I actually did number 2 wrong, because I wasn't reading. I apologize. Because I did shaded. So I'm going to write the word shaded next to this. We have 25 blocks shaded. They want to know the ratio of white squares. So that means if there are 25 shaded squares, that means I can do 100 minus 25, which is 75. So it means I have 75 white squares left over. So it'd be 75 out of 100. I apologize. That's the reason why reading is very important. And going back and checking to make sure you did it right. All right, let's go to the next page. So now, percents can be written differently. Percents can also be written as a decimal. If the pen would like to write for me, there we are. I wonder if there's something wrong up there. Let me write this down here. There you go, decimal. So 70% can also be written as 70 out of 100 or 0.70 hundredths or 0.7 or tenths, 0.7 tenths. So these two decimals are actually the same. Basically, we just cut off a 0. Okay, so it's the same thing. So there's two ways to write the same type of decimal. Okay, so 16% is 16% out of 100 or 0.16. 28% is 28% out of 100 or 0.28. Same thing for 62%. 62% is 62 out of 100 or 0.62. So just remember, 70% out of 100, you can write it as 0.28. So the zeros represent how many digits have to be after the decimal place. Okay, so if I wrote 1%, that'd be 1% out of 100%, and it won't be 0.10, it'll be 0.01.
I need to get Mr. and Mrs. Moore, Ryan, the Davidson Culberson, Brister, down to the office, please. Thank you.
Sorry about that, guys. They're making announcements. So one way that people might say on how to change a percent to a decimal or a decimal to percent is called Dr. Pepper, the DP method. So the DP method, Dr. Pepper, DP, favorite drink down here in Texas. The D is a decimal and the P is percent. So if there's two places here, same as 100 has two zeros. Okay, so let's say I have 0.62 and I want to change it to a percent. So that means I'm at the D currently. So I'm going to put a decimal here and I want to change it to a percent. So I go 2 times over to the right to get to the P. So that means I'm going to go 2 times over to get to the P. So it means my answer will be 62. And you put a percent sign because it's now a percent. Same thing. Okay. So now let's say, erase that. I still have the DP. Now let's say that I have 16%. Well, I want to change 16% to a decimal. Well, right now I'm currently at the percent. So I'm going to go 1, 2 to the left because the D is on the left of the percent. So we're going to start in the back, and there's no decimal in here, but it's just because it's in the back. So you add it, and you go 1, 2 to the left. So now your answer will be 0.16. And that's a quick, easy method to change decimals and percents. And you'll hear that quite often in your other math classes. Use the DP method, things like that. But if you don't like that, you can always remember 70%, 70 out of 100. And it's the same thing as 0.70 or 0.7. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so here we have this grid, and we're going to complete the missing table. So on the first one here, I need to find the percent, part, whole, and decimal. So I know this is 10, 10, and 5. So we already know that adds up to 25%. So 25% will be 25 out of 100, which is the same thing as 0.25. Here on the next one, 85%, I don't have the model up here. So I have to shade in 85 blocks. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I'm going to shade in the first 80 blocks. Okay. And then, so that's 85%. So it's going to be 85 out of 100 or 0.85. Oh, I forgot to add the other 5%. So we got to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now that's 85%. Originally, we just had 80 up there. Again, that's the reason why you go back and check to make sure you did what you're supposed to do. Okay, so now we have 40 out of 100. Well, 40 out of 100, we already know is 40%. So I'm going to shade in 40 blocks. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Come on. Sometimes this pen does not want to work. Okay, so it's 40%, which is the same thing as 0.40. All right, a couple more questions. At the middle school, 55% of the school body purchase their lunch at school. Write the ratio of part to whole. So if 55% of them, that's 55% out of 100 that wrote, hold on guys, let me move this down, that brought their purchase of lunch at school. Sorry. For some reason, the top part of my screen just does not want to work today. So 55% of the student body purchased their lunch at school, right? A ratio of the part to whole. So that means that 55 kids out of 100 purchased their lunch at school. You can actually reduce this if you want. We'll talk about reducing more in the next lesson. Okay? Or further on in this week. So let's just be 55%. What percent represents the student body who brings their lunch? Okay, so this is the people who bought their lunch. Now I want to figure out who brings their lunch. Well, 55 kids out of 100 brought their lunch. I can do 100 minus 55, and you get 45. So that means 45% of them brought their lunch, because it's the same thing as 45. Oof, that's a bad 45. 45 out of 100 brought their lunch. So both of these percents are related because they're, if you add them together, it equals the whole. So 55% is one part of it, and 45% is the other part, which when you add together should equal 100. Okay, so that's your lesson for today, and it's just really talking about percents, decimals. And then the next lesson, which will actually be the same day, is going to be talking about fractions and percents. Hey, thank you guys.